The Brown Park podcast is brought to you by Grow Clinics. They're Australia's leading hair transplant clinics, and you can go to growclinics.com.au. Hello.
G'day, mates.
Today we are calling Margaritas and Reflection.
Margaritas and reflection. There's no better way to reflect than with a margarita.
Right, it's a Sunday afternoon. We're sitting here having margaritas. Hang on, cheers.
Hold on, wait
Cheers.
for it.
Oh, plastic cups.
They're not plastic, they're glass.
Are they?
Yes.
Okay. Anyway, we're reflecting on the year that has been and some of the phenomenal guests that we've been lucky enough to speak to and bring you some of the best bits of the year on the Brown Park podcast.
The Brown Park podcast.
So where were we?
Margaritas and Reflection. It has truly been a big year for our show.
We've been so fortunate with some pretty great people giving up some time.
But also just with, like, you know, not to blow our own trumpet, but we've gotten a lot of listeners this year. If you have landed on this episode for the first time, this is going to give you a good chance to hear bits of what we've done this year, and then you can go back and have a listen to the full episodes if you want.
And I don't think it's got anything to do with us, but everything to do with the guests. So
Absolutely. So obviously the first of the guests that we've got to highlight would have to be Mason Sawyer, right?
Oh my God, his story, even now, like, I mean, what are we talking, 8-9 months later?
Yeah.
Still, I'll be driving along and it'll hit me.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, oh my God, that guy went through so much.
His story is one of absolute tragedy, and how one person can stare in the face of such tragedy but then go, okay, well, life goes on and I've got to do something with it.
What am I going to do with my trauma?
Yeah.
How can I make it worthwhile, or not worthwhile, but how can I help other people with my trauma?
And that's what he's doing with this story.
Brown Park.
And so I take this job, and then like couple weeks or maybe a month after, I'm sorry, dude, like the timeline gets really fuzzy.
That's so good.
Right after I take this job, my family's planning a family reunion. And I'm a big family guy. Courtney and I, you know, this is a family reunion with my extended family. Like, a lot of people are coming to this thing.
Yeah.
And we usually always go, but I told my parents and I told my family, like, I don't think Courtney and I can go this year because I just took this new job. I want to show them that I'm serious and I can't just leave on the weekends. So I don't think we can make it happen this year. And they're like, yeah, no, like, we get it. No problem. I'm like, okay. And then that Friday rolls around, and my wife, Courtney's like, hey, Mason, like, you're going to be working all weekend. I'm just going to take the kids. We're going to go to the family reunion. The kids will love it. I'll just drive back Sunday. I'm like, yeah, that's perfect. Tell Race, my brother, because it's his family too. He's going to the same family reunion.
Yeah.
It's 4 hours away. So I'm like, well, tell Race, and maybe you guys can carpool together and help each other with the kids and whatever. She's like, okay. So Race ends up going with my family. So my brother Race takes his youngest kid, Ryder, and goes with my family to the family reunion. And Race's wife and two of his other kids stay home. So they were riding, they rode down there to Bear Lake. And then on the way back from that family reunion, they got caught. And I think they got caught in a terrible, from what I've been told, a sandstorm. And it just like engulfed the highway, like just a wall of blackness just covers the highway and causes a 22 car pileup.
Wow.
And I love motorcycles, but with 3 kids, you don't get to ride it very often.
Yeah.
So my family's out of town. It's Sunday afternoon. I'm just sitting around, just waiting for them to get home. So I'm like, I'm going to take my bike out for a ride. So I take my motorcycle out for a ride, and I time it so when I get home, Courtney and the kids should be close to getting home.
Yeah.
I come back, I get off my bike, and I don't see the car. They're not here yet. Man, that's weird. So I look at my phone, and my brother's wife, Keisha, has been texting me. So I call her, and she's like, hey, have you heard from Courtney or Race? And I'm like, no. And she's like, Mason, like, they are not texting or answering the phone. Like, something's off. Like, this isn't right. And I'm like, I'm sure it's fine. It's just traffic or like whatever. So I hang up with Keisha and I call my wife, Courtney, and go straight to her voicemail. And then I call my brother Race and it goes straight to his voicemail. And I'm getting a little nervous, but nothing crazy yet. And I'm just like standing in my room, just kind of thinking like, okay. And then my phone rings and it's, I answer it, unknown number. And the guy says, hey, I'm Dr. So-and-so at Fillmore Hospital. And my, like, just Keisha. And then I'm like, oh no. So before he says anything else, I put him on speaker and I text my sister-in-law, Keisha. I'm like, hey, there's been a car accident. Come pick me up. Because in my mind, I'm thinking, dude, in my mind, worst case scenario, like where my mind went was Courtney and Race are hurt.
Yeah.
They're in a hospital bed. They can't respond. And the kids are just like, I just kind of pictured them in the hallway,
fair enough.
Terrified, crying.
Yeah.
Like and I have my motorcycle, so I can't I'm not taking a motorcycle 4 hours anyway. So I text Keisha, like, there's been a car accident, come pick me up, gotta go to the hospital. And the guy hasn't even told me anything yet. And so the guy's he's taking his time and he's about to tell me the worst news ever. And so I think he's just trying to make sure it's me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of confusion that the first responders had because I think originally they thought it was one family. Like
right.
Mason Sawyer, Ray Sawyer. They're just kind of, and then they're like, oh, wait a minute. So it's just kind of like, and then I remember, and dude, my memory is very spotty and blurry, so I could be remembering.
Fair enough, yeah.
But like, I remember just telling like, hey, like, what's going on? And he said, I'm really sorry. There's been a 22 car pileup. Everyone's dead except one person.
What?
And so I fall to the ground. And dude, like when I was a high school teacher, like I taught about the stages of grief every year. I thought I knew what it was.
Yeah.
But dude, I fall to the ground and I'm in shock. Like, no. Like, and I think I remember asking him, like, you're kidding. He's like, I'm sorry, I'm not kidding. I wish I was kidding.
Okay.
And then I'd flip to anger, and then I'd flip to just sadness, and then I'd flip to shock, and then I'd flip to the acceptance guy. There was a part of me like the acceptance guy, or like, hey, like, pick up the phone. You need to start telling, like, the survivor guy.
Yeah.
And so I just remember I'm rolling on the ground crying. And dude, if you knew my brother Race, he was a state championship wrestler. And then he got into MMA fighting. And the guy could just take a punch, man, just tough as nails type of guy.
Yeah.
And so I remember when that doctor said there's one survivor, and I'm on the ground crying and going through what I'm going through. And I have to pick up the phone and figure out, like, all right, who is it? I'm like panicking. And I have this feeling like it's going to be Race. Like, if anyone's going to survive a 22 car pileup, it's going to be Race. And what that meant for me is my whole family's gone. My whole family's dead.
Yeah.
And I have this weird guilt and shame that I was essentially hoping that my brother and Ryder would be dead. And it's really weird, guys. And trauma is just a nasty thing, man. It's just because, like, there's a part of me that gets it, like, Mace, like, you don't need to feel bad about that. Like, we get it. Race would get it. Everyone gets it. So I get it. But then there's like another dude in my head that just the self-hatred and the negative talk and it's not good. So I pick up the phone and I'm like, please don't be Race. And he says the survivor's a 3-year-old. So I fall back to the ground because my wife's gone. And like Courtney called me when they filled up for gas like halfway. And she texted me and said, hey, just getting gas. I love you. I'll see you soon. Never saw her again.
All right.
And like the accident was so brutal. Couldn't even see her body. They said you can see her hand. We'll let you see her hand. The only person I saw was Frankie. But anyway, so I'm like, okay, so my wife's gone, Riggins is gone, my brother's gone, Ryder's gone, and then someone else is gone, but I'm not sure who. And because when they say 3 years old, that could mean my daughter Frankie.
Yeah.
Like, or that could be Blue. And honestly, like if I was a sane person in that moment, it probably would have been really clear who the survivor was. But I was going through so much, and I wanted everyone to be alive. So when they told the 3-year-old, I wanted it to be Frankie and Blue.
Yeah. So that's Mason Sawyer, and if you want to check out his full episode, obviously you can go back and have a listen.
It's one to really, really listen to, especially if you've got a family or you just want to learn to be present and actually focus on what you've got.
Yeah. Who would you like to reflect on, Dion?
Even Sydney Raz.
Oh, yeah.
Sydney Raz. So if you go back, listen to him, Sydney Raz is on social media and he's the guy that does What I Wish I Had Known.
Yeah.
Before I was 30, I think it was.
Yeah.
But his flip side of that, like, I mean, it was very lighthearted, very, like insightful, like giving you some great life hacks.
Yeah. Oh man, some of his life hacks are phenomenal.
Yeah, you got to check them out. There's so many things there. But his other side of his story was he was suffering trauma and hadn't really spoken about it too much. So, and he gave up some time and spoke through his trauma and what he was doing and how he was processing his past.
So my trauma, it's interesting. So I grew up in a pretty, my dad was not a good person.
Yeah.
So he was, physically, mentally, all of the abusives, right?
Yeah.
And so we all sort of had to deal with it in our own way. But in the past, I want to say like 7 years, I have truly dealt with what that was, especially after so my mom, my dad, and my stepdad all died within like 3 years of each other before I was 30.
Oh, right.
Yes.
And so I've dealt with that a lot. So once that happened, I think I just had like sort of a shift of going down a deeper and deeper dark hole. And then when I started dating my now wife, it got like kind of worse and worse, and my anxieties like sort of really started to overtake me, and it was really, really difficult for me, right? And so then when I started going to therapy hardcore again, it was once someone told me that I had symptoms of PTSD, I looked at the therapist and I was like, that's insane. What are you talking about? That's not a real thing.
Yep.
I didn't go to war. I didn't do any of that stuff. So why would I have PTSD, right? So once I found that out and I could sort of like reanalyze how my brain was working and then go to therapy and then like talk about how I was disassociating all the time, even though I had no idea what disassociation was, it was like, oh, I can think of it more. I can like work on it more, and sit in it more. So naming the trauma is really just sort of like me being able to look at it and go, okay, I'm, afraid of doing dishes because of some sort of connection to my trauma growing up, but I'm afraid of doing dishes because the water is running, so I don't know who's behind me, right? So it's like, okay, how can I mitigate that? So, it's just sort of naming it that way and just sort of like being more okay with talking about it openly.
So what was the catalyst for you to jump back into therapy?
We were living above this family and we were having a party. It was like a Friendsgiving or something. And I was so aware and scared of making so much noise. I shut myself in like this weird, like dark hole. Right.
Yeah.
And I just sort of like locked myself in the room and like had to sit there. Right.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, this is the part where like my mental health is now affecting everybody else around me. And that's when I sort of made that decision of like, I can't do this anymore. So I have to go to therapy. the key is not to survive, it's to thrive, right? So to think about it like that, you like existing is more than survival. And I think that, especially before you go to therapy and before you have someone that is a trained professional to say, hey, that's anxiety, you're just constantly moving around the world going, oh, this is just normal. What are you going to do when the anxiety is named? Are you going to work within that new knowledge, or are you going to keep on doing it? Right. So
exactly. Yeah.
Can I ask a personal question, and you can not answer this if you don't want to? Yeah. So did you ever get a chance to sit down with him and go, what the fuck?
Yeah, I tried a few times. Right before he died, I called him on the phone and I was like, Dad, you got to tell me the truth, man. You got to be real with me. And it was probably like a week or two before he died. And he was like, all right, Sid, I'll tell you. We'll get to the bottom of it. Well, I'll tell you all the truth. And then he died. And I was like, you motherfucker.
Oh, fuck.
And it was just one of those things. Yeah, exactly. And I was just like, you had to lie like one more time. You had to lie. Just one more time before he fucking died.
That's Sydney Raz, the life of a life hacker on the Brown Park podcast. You can go back and listen to his full episode. Coming up in a second, I want to highlight one of Australia's favourite singers who's just put out an album.
Oh, my God, yes.
And he was absolutely amazing. We'll get to him next.
Brown
Park. So let's talk about Grow.
Yes, our fabulous sponsors of the Brown Park podcast.
Again, we couldn't do it without you.
Absolutely not. And they are here to support you in your quest to get more hair.
And I want to talk about your Grow Diary on Instagram.
Oh, yeah.
Because it followed your journey from beginning to end.
Absolutely.
So if you want to check out what it's actually like to go through the process, and from somebody that has done it,
yep.
I mean, we both had it done, but they documented your journey.
Yes. Or you can just go to the website, which is growclinics.com.au, because it's actually featured up there as well.
You're featured. I love it.
Hey. Look at that. They take pride in being the leading hair transplant provider in Australia, and they perform more hair transplants than any other clinic. They also have a range of different options for people that don't necessarily want to go through the transplant process.
So if you don't, like I say, if you don't want to have a transplant, they do have some medication that can help thicken up your current hair, slow down hair loss. So they've got you covered from hair transplants through to just maintaining what you've got.
Yeah, and if you want to have a look at all the before and afters and some of the Grow Diaries, go to the website growclinics.com.au, because you can defy genetics with Grow. Hey, while we've got your attention,
listen up.
We just want to ask a quick favour. If you could go to your podcast provider, wherever you're listening to this, and write a lovely review, give it a rating, do whatever you can, we would be most appreciative.
Or even at the very least, just hit that little subscribe button so then the episodes, when we release them, come up in your feed.
Exactly. That is all. Back to the show.
As you were.
Thank you.
The Brown Podcast.
Sam Fischer was a magnificent guest on our show this year.
He was a pretty good get for us two chumps.
Yeah. He has had a lot of success with the song, and then COVID hit and the world shut down, and he looked like he was going to be, he had one of the biggest songs on the planet, and he couldn't do anything to promote it.
Imagine, so he was realising all his dreams, like his dreams were coming to fruition. He speaks about having business class or first class on Emirates already booked, ready to rock and roll.
Yep.
And then bloody COVID hit and, like I say, shut him all down.
Yeah. But his backstory and his early life story is just phenomenal. For those that don't know your journey, you've written so many songs for a bunch of people behind the scenes, but only in the last couple of years got out in front of the microphone and went, you know what, I can do this. I'm going to be the person in front, because your voice is truly fucking amazing. And the songs you write are great. Like they're fucking amazing as well. But it's I can see why LA would, particularly in the music biz, would be a tidal wave.
Yeah, I mean, a tidal wave is a good way of putting it. And the other thing is, when this city started to go crazy, and then people realized, okay, this isn't just like a local thing. This is going worldwide. Every door on planet Earth opened for me, and every big exec at every company was like ready to embrace me. And I don't know, you fall into that trap of like I've made it. Here's my fucking hit. Like shit's good now. And then obviously the pandemic happened, and so it was really bittersweet because I was like, on the outside, I'm like, fuck yeah, everything's amazing. We're fucking killing it. And then on the inside, I'm like, it is 3 a.m. and I'm wearing a Gucci suit that doesn't fit me, and I'm up for my first aria on Zoom.
Yeah.
It's just been a mind fuck, but I'm grateful for the things that have happened, and I've worked my ass off to get to where I am. But it definitely it hasn't come without some mental health. Just kind of, I don't know.
Yeah. You've spoken about how difficult COVID was for you, and that played havoc with your mental health. Can you tell us about that for a sec?
So I was in LA for 10 years. I've been signed, I've been dropped, I've worked with some horrible people. I've been very lucky to meet some amazing people. I think that the last, when I wrote This City, I was in my first record deal, and I sent it into the my label president, and I got a response 2 days later, and all it said was, "It's pretty." And I was like,
pretty.
I was like, okay, cool.
Pretty good.
I was like, yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was like, cool, I'll go fuck myself. And you keep going, mate. Anyway, I got dropped shortly after I wrote This City. And
hang on. Sorry.
Yeah.
This City was a monster of a fucking song.
Yeah. Yeah. But I wrote it in 2017.
Yeah.
And I got dropped from my record deal in like August of 2017, and then I put out This City in January of 2018. And when I put out This City, no one gave a shit. Like,
really,
far out.
It was nuts. Like, Megan Trainor and Lewis Capaldi posted it because we were mates, and that was really cool. But like the first year, This City did 4 million streams on Spotify, which like at the time I was like, let's fucking go, 4 million streams. And then the second year it did 200 million.
Wow.
And,
shit. Yeah.
But the guy I was signed to was very, very abusive and very, very emotionally manipulative. And this was a record label. I was the only artist signed to the label. It was a joint venture with Columbia in the States. And this guy really just decimated my confidence. And I went through a full identity crisis, and I just kind of, I begged to be dropped. 6 months in, I begged my management to stop him from having any communication with me. And, I begged to be dropped, and he wouldn't. And 3 months later, he did. And I was like, cool, I'm going to put out this EP independently, and then fuck being an artist because it's too much. I'm just going to like settle for writing for others. And yeah, I didn't want to be an artist anymore. And I put out This City, and January 2018, no one cared. And I was like, right, cool. Great. Universe is telling me, just be a writer. And so I was hustling for a long time as a writer, and I was getting somewhere. And right as that was starting to go, my writing career was starting to go, This City all of a sudden was started to do numbers in like January 2019. And I was like, well, what's going on? And then I ended up, it ended up going massively viral. I learned about a new app called TikTok, and that blew it up. And, day after my wedding, I went on tour with Lewis Capaldi. And then the day after that, it got its first playlist. And then in October or November of that year, I signed to RCA. And then for 3 months, my life was like, you're a superstar. The whole world, like I was about to go on a fucking global promo trip. I was going to be flown first class from Sydney to fucking Stockholm on Emirates.
Oh, yes.
If you don't know, that's a sweep in the
goal.
sky.
That's
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's a real bummer. And then, a once in a generation pandemic came and shut that down.
So did you have like mental health issues before the pandemic, or did that trigger it? Because normally there's like there can be a trigger point where all of a sudden you go, well, shit, I've got a problem. Mine was children.
Sure. Okay. I definitely have struggled with bouts of depression, but I've always been quite careful to not label it depression because I think I think there is a difference between going through depression and just having down
and
sadder
sadness
moments.
Yeah.
You know, I think I went through. I was bullied really, really hard at school, and my dad also used to bully me a lot. And there were, and it was all to do with my like identity and just like who I was. And so I kind of grew up in this shame culture, and so it's a weird thing because now let's go. Like,
why was it a shame culture?
My dad created this culture of if you are this way, then you're bad. Basically.
So artsy.
If you're, yeah, I mean, like he was homophobic, and you know, I'm at 7 years old being called the F slur. I had no idea what that was, but that's what I was being thrown at because I wanted to do musical theater and I wanted to do ballet and I wanted to do gymnastics. And my dad thought, oh, he's gay. And so that was like really like kind of just beaten into me.
Oh, at a 7-year-old, as a 7-year-old, for your father
from your
to
parent,
be saying that, what a piece of shit, as you said.
What a piece of shit.
That is Sam Fischer, and I suggest you go back and have a listen to the full episode because he's a great chat and he's also a really good human.
Looking back.
Sorry, Han.
Oh, hold on, break time.
Margarita time, yep.
By the end of this, we're going to go.
No, it's going to be slurry. But that's what this is.
That's fine. We'll do what we want. Nobody controls us. Let's talk about Shiny Chantel.
Oh, she's a legend.
Oh, my God. Her story.
Her story is incredible. If you follow her online, she's all about body positivity. She's she has no filter.
No filter.
She's absolutely amazing. And she was a stripper at 17 to provide for her family.
She just needed to get away and also, like I say, financially support her family because they had no money. Her mum was in an abusive relationship with another woman.
Yep.
And that in itself created a lot of confusion in her mind.
Yeah.
Fast track a couple of years, then I was 16 turning 17, and my sister, I'd heard her over the phone one day to my cousin about stripping down here in Melbourne. And she had done a night at Men's Gallery, the classic Men's Gallery. I don't know where you guys are, but it's that, yeah. Yeah. Anyway, and I was like, oh, okay. Anyway, that weekend that she went back to stay with my auntie because mum was, it was really bad. She was physically abusing me and my brother really bad because obviously we didn't know. We just thought, okay, the girl's lost her mind. Like she's angry. She hates mum, all that stuff. But we didn't know she was drug affected at the time.
Yeah.
And started dabbling in that. And also just, being a teenager, like you're already going through so much mentally, physically, emotionally, and coming from our home. So she'd left her ID behind. And I was like, yeah.
Game on.
And I was so tired. I was so tired of seeing my mum struggle, honestly. My mum was just a fighter. And I talk about my mum a lot, podcast, little TV show features. And sometimes I feel real guilty and I constantly call and clarify. And I say to her, Mum, you weren't the bad situation in this. But honestly, when you come from shit and you are taught nothing, how are you? So for her, this life that we were living was a big level up. It was like owning a home, let's own a home. Let's, all those things that we're told as women to do to be successful. But it fucking ruined her life trying to chase that dream for us. So she got severely in debt. Her partner and her were in all sorts. And I was just so tired. I was so tired of seeing them punch on. I was so tired of pulling my brother. The only time me and my brother would spend any time together was when I was pulling my mum off my sister. She wasn't smashing her with something from in the house. My mum was so deeply frustrated and broken.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It was, I remember one time, this is one of the last times, sorry, just a sec.
Yeah.
Take your time.
Yeah. And it's really important for me to talk about this, and it probably seems like it's a really touchy subject because it never gets old, that memory.
Yeah.
And it stays with you forever. And this is just the reason why it's so important to talk about, because when we grow up around this stuff, it really, I mean, you know, we hear it all the time about you grow up and you become an adult and you make your own decisions, and, we can't say that that's why she did this because of this when she was younger, but it does.
It's trauma.
And
it's trauma.
It does. And, you know, we talk about trauma, and trauma just, for me personally, was a very traumatic situation. The last time I'd pulled my mum off my sister was when she had beat the absolute shit out of her with a massive shove. One of the workers had left because we were having the house renovated. And, you know, I don't blame my mum for any of this. I mean, my sister was an absolute monster. What do you do with a kid that's physically abusing the others?
Yeah.
We're sending the kids to school. They're completely bruised because we can't get a hold of on this other one. Like, it was just, anyway. So that was the last time that the situation was bad, and that was the weekend my sister went off to my auntie's and she'd left the ID behind, and I was like, I am just tired. I'm tired of this life. From the age of 9 till about 14, the amount of times I'd tried to take my own life. I think about that now, and that nobody in that home knew that. That is just horrifying. I mean, you guys have girls, and you can't even imagine the fact that they go home at 9 years old and they slide down the back of that door, and I can feel myself sliding down the back of the bedroom door, closing it, thinking, I'm going to fucking do it. Today's the day, because it was just hell. And they'd be outside punching on in the shed, her and her partner. And it's very rare that you hear of, a gay relationship of two women punching on. Like, that's, I mean, so... Yeah. And also, one's a little bit more masculine, the other isn't, and you're constantly confused between, like, who's right here, who's wrong, you know, like...
Yeah, that'd be a real head screw, wouldn't it?
Well, yeah, because there's obviously, you know, we think about it now, and I was in quite an abusive marriage for quite some time there. And, you know, you look at relationships and you instantly just assume that if something's not right, it's the man, the toxic man, the man that's abusive, the man. But we didn't have that. Like, we'd see it in new movies and stuff. We were watching all kinds of movies. And that was actually, honestly, one of the biggest head fucks. And I still think now of just, like, who was right, who was wrong. Obviously no one.
Yeah.
But at the time, you're blaming the other one because the other one looks more masculine. And, you know, as a child, that is very, very confusing. And I don't think we hear and talk about that enough. You know, we talk about being accepting and, you know, and I feel like I can speak on the, you know, for children who have grown up with gay parents, it's really important because we don't talk about the confusion that we go through. You know, we talk about those people being accepted and, you know, encouraging, you know, other children to be them and accept. And you see it everywhere. It's on social media. Yep. It's everywhere. And it's like, yeah, that's all good. But what about the people that haven't been explained to what the fuck is going on? Because we're so brainwashed. You know, society's taught us that men and women, and that's how it works. And, you know, and it's different now. And I get that. But that doesn't mean that for us, children that grew up with gay parents aren't still utterly fucking deeply confused.
Brown Park.
So look, if you want to have a listen to any of those interviews in full, go back through our last season. We've got 2 seasons worth of shows there with everybody from all different sort of walks of life.
So that's part 1. We're going to do another one of these, a best of.
Yeah.
We're going to release in the next couple of weeks.
Yep.
So we just want to thank you all again for listening.
Yep, and subscribing.
Subscribe, like, comments.
Punch that subscribe button. No, I don't know. What do they say in YouTube videos? Yeah.
I don't know.
My son watches all these YouTube videos and you get these guys like literally yelling, going, make sure you punch the subscribe button. And it's like, oh my God. Margaritas are kicking in.
Perfect.
The Brown Podcast.
Why are you happy?
Because I don't want to be sad.